There is something deeply unsettling that almost no one ever tells you about people who struggle with narcissistic patterns. Almost everyone makes the mistake of assuming that these individuals destroy the lives and the peace of the people around them because they are powerful, dominant, highly intelligent, or somehow superior to the rest of us. That belief is not just wrong. It is actually the exact illusion that the narcissist wants you to believe. Because the truth is far more disturbing, yet it is also far more liberating once you finally take the time to truly understand it. The reality is that these individuals do not destroy everything in their path because they are strong. They destroy everything around them because something deep inside of them is already broken and they are completely incapable of facing it. Every relationship, every friendship, every single family bond, every golden opportunity, and every ounce of peace that they touch becomes mere collateral damage in a private, silent war they are waging against themselves. If you have ever walked away from a person like this while wondering how on earth someone could intentionally burn down something so beautiful, so promising, and so full of genuine love, this is the answer you have been searching for your entire life. Before we go any further, I want to say that if you are someone who has felt the intense confusion, the crushing exhaustion, and the thick emotional fog that comes from being close to a narcissist, this channel was built specifically for you. Here, we break down these confusing behaviors with clarity. We help you heal from the weight of emotional abuse. We guide you back to your own sense of confidence, and we teach you exactly how to protect yourself and your peace from toxic people for the rest of your life. Please subscribe now, because what you are about to understand will fundamentally change the way you see every painful relationship you have ever had. The very first thing you have to understand is that narcissism is not the same thing as arrogance. It is not the same as high confidence, and it is certainly not high self-esteem. If we look at it from a clinical perspective, pathological narcissism is actually the complete opposite. It is a fragile, unstable, and deeply insecure internal structure that is held together only by carefully maintained images, a desperate need for control, and a constant, never-ending intake of external validation. Underneath all that grandiosity is a self that feels fundamentally empty, defective, and entirely unworthy of love. And because that internal wound is so unbearable, the narcissist spends every single waking moment running away from it. They cannot sit comfortably with themselves. They cannot tolerate honest self-reflection. They cannot survive true emotional intimacy without feeling completely exposed. So they spend their lives building an entire personality designed specifically to avoid the truth of who they actually are. Anything that threatens that carefully constructed image, even love, even simple kindness, or a moment of genuine connection, becomes a threat that must be neutralized immediately. This is exactly why narcissists destroy the very things they claim to value most. Because the closer something gets to their authentic, hidden self, the more dangerous and terrifying it feels. Real intimacy requires vulnerability. Vulnerability requires honesty. And honesty is the one thing the narcissist simply cannot afford to give. So, when a partner finally gets too close, when a friend starts to see too much, or when a family member dares to challenge the illusion they have built, the narcissist does not lean in to grow. Instead, they sabotage, they withdraw, or they provoke. They create conflict out of absolutely nothing. They start arguments designed to push the other person away because emotional distance feels much safer to them than emotional truth. And here is where the psychology becomes even more revealing. Narcissists are driven by an internal force that most people never quite recognize, which is deep, persistent envy. I am not talking about simple admiration or healthy ambition. I am talking about pure, corrosive envy. They cannot tolerate the goodness, the stability, the peace, or the success of others, even when those others are people they claim to love. When someone close to them thrives, the narcissist does not feel proud or happy for them. They feel diminished. Because in their distorted internal world, another person's light makes their own inner emptiness look even more visible. So, they undermine, they criticize, they minimize your accomplishments, or they make little jokes that cut a little too deep. They withdraw their affection at the exact moment you need it the most. They cannot celebrate you because your joy serves as a painful reminder of everything they cannot feel inside themselves. This is why families with a narcissistic member often feel like emotional war zones. The narcissist cannot allow harmony to exist because harmony does not revolve around them. Healthy families create connection through mutual respect and shared emotional safety. But the narcissist needs a rigid hierarchy. They need to be the center of attention. They need someone to admire them, someone to blame for their failures, someone to control, and someone to use as a scapegoat. So, they engineer chaos. They triangulate relationships. They pit siblings against each other. They rewrite history to suit their needs. They create alliances and then break them just as quickly. They turn parents against children and children against parents. And then, when the family finally fractures and falls apart, they stand right in the middle of the wreckage and call themselves the ultimate victim. The exact same pattern plays out in friendships. Narcissists do not form friendships the way emotionally healthy people do. They form transactions. Every single relationship is evaluated based on what it provides to them, whether that is admiration, status, access to certain circles, constant attention, or a steady stream of emotional supply. The moment a friend stops feeding the narcissist's image, the friendship begins to decay. You might have noticed that narcissists rarely keep long-term friendships. The relationships almost always end in dramatic betrayal, or they simply quietly disappear without any real explanation. Because once you stop being useful to their self-image, you effectively stop existing in their internal world. And in the workplace, the destruction is even more strategic and calculated. Narcissists often appear charismatic, ambitious, and high-performing when they first arrive, but over time, the cracks start to emerge. They take credit for the hard work of others. They sabotage colleagues who outshine them. They cannot tolerate any kind of feedback because feedback feels like a direct attack on their identity. They form little cliques. They spread malicious gossip. They manipulate managers. They turn departments into political battlegrounds. And when their behavior finally catches up to them, they do not pause to reflect. They blame everyone else. They paint themselves as misunderstood geniuses surrounded by jealous, incompetent people. And then they move on to the next environment, leaving behind a trail of damaged careers, broken teams, and confused people who simply cannot understand what just happened to them. You may be sitting there right now realizing that every single pattern you are hearing is something you have lived through personally. And I want you to pause for a moment and really absorb this truth, because it is one of the most healing realizations you will ever encounter in your life. The destruction you experienced was never actually about you. It was never about your worth or your value. It was never about something you failed to do or something you failed to be. The narcissist would have destroyed anyone who got close enough to them. You were not the problem. You were the mirror. And mirrors are the one thing a narcissist cannot ever survive looking into. If this is resonating with you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. This is the kind of deep understanding that rebuilds people from the inside out. The more you stay with this content, the more clearly you will begin to see patterns that once felt invisible to you. You are not alone in this. There is a whole community here learning how to heal, and you belong in it. Now, let us go even deeper into the specific psychological mechanisms that fuel this level of destruction. One of the most powerful forces inside the narcissist is their total inability to regulate their own emotions. Most adults, even the imperfect ones, develop the ability to feel an emotion, process it internally, and respond to it with some level of awareness and maturity. The narcissist cannot do this. Their emotional system is underdeveloped, highly reactive, and almost entirely externalized. When they feel shame, they cannot hold it themselves, so they project it onto you. When they feel fear, they immediately convert it into anger. When they feel inadequate, they lash out and attack the person who triggered that feeling. This is exactly why arguments with narcissists feel so insane and draining. You are not actually arguing about the topic sitting in front of you. You are absorbing the intense emotions that they cannot tolerate within themselves. They are not communicating with you. They are simply trying to offload their own internal chaos onto you. They are simply discharging their own inner turmoil onto you, This is also the reason why the idea of being held accountable feels like death to a narcissist. For a healthy person, admitting that they were wrong is certainly uncomfortable, but it is also entirely survivable. However, for the narcissist, admitting even a small fault feels like a direct threat to the fragile structure of their entire identity. If they admit they are wrong about one thing, they fear they might be exposed as being wrong about everything. If they acknowledge that they hurt you, they would have to face the terrifying possibility that they are the kind of person who hurts others. And that truth is so unbearable to them that they will do just about anything to avoid seeing it. They will lie to your face. They will rewrite the history of events. They will accuse you of the very same things they just did to you. They will twist your words around, distort your memory of what was said, and they will keep rearranging the facts of reality until you finally begin to doubt your own mind. Please understand that this is not a communication style. This is a desperate survival mechanism for a sense of self that simply cannot face its own reflection. And this is exactly where the psychological habit known as projection becomes one of the most violent tools in their entire arsenal. Projection is the unconscious act of taking the things you cannot accept in yourself and placing them onto someone else. The narcissist who calls you selfish is almost always describing their own behavior. The one who accuses you of lying is almost always the one doing the lying. The one who insists that you do not love them enough is almost always the person who is incapable of feeling love themselves. In a very real way, every single accusation they make is actually a confession. Once you truly understand how projection works, the heavy fog begins to lift. You start to hear their words not as accurate descriptions of you, but as autobiographies that they do not even realize they are reading aloud. But perhaps the most painful pattern of all is the constant tendency of the narcissist to destroy the very things they claim to want the most. They say they want love, yet they sabotage it at every turn. They say they want a family, yet they fracture every bond they have. They say they want success, but they undermine it the very moment it finally arrives. They say they want peace, but they create nothing but chaos every time a peaceful moment appears. Why do they do this? The reason is that their internal world simply cannot match their external desires. Love requires a level of vulnerability they cannot tolerate. Family requires the kind of accountability they cannot accept. Success requires a level of consistency they are unable to maintain. Peace requires the kind of honest self-confrontation that they literally cannot survive. So they destroy whatever they build, not because they actually want to, but because the version of themselves they would have to become in order to keep it is the one version they are running away from at all costs. And this is the moment that so many survivors finally understand something they could never quite explain before. The narcissist did not leave because you were not enough. The narcissist did not cheat because you were not attractive enough. The narcissist did not fly into a rage because you somehow provoked them. The narcissist did not destroy your bond because the bond was weak. They destroyed it because the bond was real. And being real is the one thing they cannot live inside. If you have made it this far into the video, you already know how important this message is. Please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone else who truly needs to hear this right now. There are millions of people out there who are still trapped in this kind of confusion, still blaming themselves for things that were never their fault, and still trying to understand what happened to them. Your single share could be the exact moment someone else finally sees the truth. This is how we break these toxic cycles. This is how we protect future generations from the damage of emotional abuse. This is how we take the pain we have suffered and turn it into a purpose that helps others. Now, consider what happens when the narcissist finally begins to lose their grip on the control they have over you. Because this is the exact moment where the destruction reaches its absolute peak. When a narcissist senses that their power over your life is weakening, they panic. When you start setting clear boundaries, when you stop reacting to their bait, when you stop wasting your time trying to explain yourself, and when you finally stop chasing their approval, something deep inside them hits a state of emergency. Their entire sense of self depends on their ability to influence your emotional state. The very moment they realize they cannot move you or manipulate your feelings, they feel like they are disappearing. So they escalate their behavior. They smear your good name to others. They reach out to the people you love. They flip the entire narrative to make themselves look like the hero. They play the role of the victim with such intense conviction that even people who once trusted you will start to doubt you. It is important to know that this is not random behavior. This is what is known as a narcissistic injury. And the wound it creates deep inside them produces a type of rage that has very little to do with you personally and everything to do with the total collapse of their false illusion. And yet, even in the middle of all their cruelty, there is something profoundly tragic about the narcissist. Because the truth is that they will never know what real love feels like. They will never feel the genuine safety of being truly seen by another person. They will never experience the quiet joy of being accepted for who they actually are, simply because they spend every waking moment of their lives hiding from that self. They will move from one relationship to the next, from one job to the next, and from one city to the next. They will always be busy blaming the outside world for their unhappiness. They will always be absolutely certain that the next person they meet will finally be the one who understands them. They will always end up destroying the very thing that could have saved them. This is not a life of power. This is a life sentence. And while the people they hurt are busy growing, healing, and reclaiming their own lives, the narcissist remains frozen in the exact same patterns. They are stuck repeating the same destruction over and over again, never learning, never softening, and never becoming free. This is exactly why your own healing process matters so much. Because the moment you finally stop measuring your worth by the amount of chaos they created in your life, you begin to see your true reflection again. You begin to remember who you were before the gaslighting started, before the constant manipulation, and before the slow, painful erosion of your self-confidence. You begin to feel your own thoughts again without the static of their voice constantly playing in your head. You begin to trust your own perceptions of reality. You begin to recognize your own worth, not because someone else validated it for you, but because you finally see it clearly for yourself. And once you see it, no one will ever be able to take it away from you again. The destruction the narcissist left behind was never a final verdict on your value as a human being. It was merely a map of their own broken internal world. The wreckage was theirs. The chaos was theirs. The dysfunction was theirs. You were simply standing in the path of a storm that had been forming inside of them long before you ever even met. And now that you truly understand it, you can finally step out of that storm and into the life that was always meant for you. It is a life built on healthy boundaries, on self-respect, on emotional safety, and on relationships that nourish you instead of draining you. If this message reached something deep inside of you, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video. Join this community of people who are healing, learning, and reclaiming their lives. You do not have to walk this path all by yourself. There is clarity here. There is validation here. There is a way forward for you. And it all begins the moment you decide that your peace is no longer negotiable. You were never the destruction. You were the light that they simply could not contain. And the moment you stop apologizing for that light is the exact moment your entire life begins to change for the better.